Katya grew up in a big family, but she was the only child of her parents. She always wanted to have a sister or a brother, but it so happened that her mother could not give birth anymore for health reasons. Already in childhood, the girl was very jealous of her friends who had brothers or sisters. All her games were reduced to taking care of numerous dolls. And when her father gave her a kitten, she dressed it in baby clothes and rode in a pram. Gradually, in the course of growing up, the dreams of having a brother or sister grew smoothly into the desire to have children of her own. So immediately after turning 18 years old, girl rushed to marry a guy who had long been courting her mad love for him, did not feel, but for some reason thought that this is not the main thing in marriage. Her husband did not share her desire to urgently have offspring and postponed this event to a later date. But Katya did not retreat from the intended goal, decided to undergo a full examination to ensure that her baby was born. Healthy verdict of doctors sounded like thunder in the clear sky. You cannot bear a child because of congenital kidney disease. Otherwise, you will both die. The doctor's words sounded as if they were a verdict. After that, the young woman became discouraged, refused to eat, and did not want to talk to anyone, because the most cherished dream in her life was not destined to come true. And what can I say? Her whole life is now broken and meaningless. So Katya thought that during this difficult period, relations with her husband, already far from warm, completely came to naught. Katya decided to leave her parents' house in the village, especially since her mother had become seriously ill and needed constant care. Since then, Katya lived between two settlements. She went to the city to study at the correspondence department and then returned home to take care of her mother. After 2 years, she finished her studies and got a job. And after another 6 months, her mother was gone. So she was left to live alone in the village with her father to arrange her personal life. The young woman did not try. Besides, she believed that a woman who is not able to bear and give birth to a child is of no use to anyone. Nobody needs a child. And at that time, she was only 22 years old. But one day there was an event that turned her whole life upside down. Early in the morning, Katya was feeding the animals in the yard as usual before work, and suddenly heard a sound like a faint. When she opened the gate, the young woman was horrified to find an infant. Looking around and seeing no one who could leave the baby, Katya picked him up and carried him into the house. "Daddy, look who I found under our door in the bushes." The young woman decided to swaddle him. Once beautiful swaddling blanket and well-fed baby said that so far he had lived quite well. But what could have happened and how he got here, these questions asked themselves Katya and her father. In the corner of the blanket, they found a note, his. A note. His name is Misha. "But Michael, now, we know at least your name," affectionately said Katya's father, took the baby in his arms. "Daughter need to call the police and report the discovery." But Katya affectionately strokes Shia boy on the head. She looked pleadingly at her father. "Dad, please let's call tomorrow and let him stay with us for a day, and we'll say we found him later." Dad didn't object. He wanted the baby to stay. Katya called in to work and took 2 days off, saying that she was a little sick all day. She coddled the teddy bear, as she affectionately called him, and he even smiled at her a couple of times in the evening after putting the baby to bed. Katya decided to have a serious talk with her father. She sat down in the kitchen with a cup of tea and began the conversation. I thought about it for a long time and decided that if it is fate's will and the baby is mine, I cannot give him up. I can't give him up. I want to adopt him. I want to be the mother of my own children. I'm not destined to breastfeed him, and he's so sweet and so cute in general. I've decided everything, but I want you to support me in my decision. It's important to me. It's important to me. Katya's thought ended. Father sighed heavily, answered his daughter. What if his parents are looking for him? Maybe someone stole him. You haven't thought about it. Then his questions were quite logical, but the young woman tried not to think about it. But her father agreed with her idea to adopt Misha, if it turned out that way. Early the next morning, they went to the police station to report their discovery. The boy was taken to the hospital for examination, and then he was to go to a baby home. Katya was allowed to visit the boy occasionally, and when it became known that there had been no reports of missing babies, Katya began to prepare the documents for his adoption. So Misha became Katya's son. To avoid unnecessary questions from her fellow villagers, the young woman decided to move with her father and son to a neighboring town after selling their house and buying a small apartment. Katya loved her son as much as his grandfather, and the boy responded in kind, growing up to be a very obedient and kind child. Many years passed since Misha appeared in Katya's life, but she could not build a personal life on the eve of her son's 15th birthday. Katya did not sleep well and constantly felt anxious, as if something was going to happen. Bad thoughts she chased away from herself, tried to occupy herself with pleasant troubles to prepare for the holiday. As Misha was old enough, they decided to celebrate the holiday in the company of his friends in the nearest cafe, and the next day they would celebrate at home in the circle of the closest people. On the appointed day, they gathered around the table in their home. Katya baked her son's favorite cake and prepared all sorts of delicious things. Doctors, her gift. She said, "Son, time flies very fast. Here you are already 15 years old. I wish you happiness, that troubles bypassed. You know one thing, whatever happens in your life, I will always support you. I will always support you, because you are the greatest happiness that fate has given me." Having said that, Katya felt tears coming to her eyes. "Mommy, don't cry. I love you and Grandpa very much too, and I won't let anyone hurt you, because we are one family," Misha said. Hugging his mother tenderly, they continued laughing and chatting, eating festive dishes. But the insistent ringing of the doorbell interrupted their fun. They opened the door and looked at the uninvited guest. Katya was stunned. In front of her stood a man like 2 drops of water, resembling her son. "What do you want?" she asked nervously. "Excuse me, but I'd like to see my son." "I'm sorry," the man said. "You made a mistake. Your son is not here. Why have you come to ask for money? But you know I don't have any money, and you're wasting your time. I'm going to ask you never to come to our house again." Katya hurried to close the door in front of the man when she heard footsteps coming from the kitchen and was on her way to work when she suddenly saw the same man who was obviously waiting for her. "Please, I need to talk to you. It won't take long, please." He looked at Katya so pleadingly that she decided to give him a chance and sat down on a bench with him and listened to his story. It turned out that Misha was a long-awaited child in the family of Sergei. The the name of his wife's husband, who decided to open his own business. Sergei borrowed a large sum of money, but a year later, someone set fire to his prosperous shop. Now there was only a fraction of the debt left, but there was nothing to pay them back. Creditors began to demand repayment of the debt, began to threaten their family. From the constant stress of Sergei's wife went into premature labor, as a result of which they were able to save only a boy's grief. Stricken by the loss of his wife, left with a newborn baby in his arms, the man did not know how to go on, but creditors cared little for other people's grief, and they increasingly pressured the young single father. And one day, someone set fire to Sergei's car, which was parked in a parking lot near the... After that, he was given 3 days to collect the necessary amount of money, or they threatened to kill him. Of course, he had nowhere to get that kind of money. On the evening of the 3rd day, as usual, Sergei was walking in the park with a baby carriage when he noticed 3 ambassadors clearly heading his way. Grabbing his son in his arms, Sergei ran towards his dead wife's car. Fortunately, he always had the key to it with him, and quickly moving off, he realized that his pursuers were not lagging behind. Shaved in his direction on the doorstep of the outermost house, he noticed a young woman who was Katya and decided to leave the child under her door, realizing that with a baby in his arms, he would hardly be able to escape all this time he had to hide. And 2 years later, he found out that his creditors were imprisoned for a very long time on serious articles. He tried to find his son and found out that he was adopted by Katya. To tell you the truth, I had a firm intention to take my son, but after watching you for a while, I was amazed at how sincerely you love him, yes. And what I could give him at that moment. I didn't have any money or housing at that time. Sergei watched his son grow up from the outside, and only now, when the doctors gave him a disappointing diagnosis, he decided to meet with his son. Listening to his revelation, Katya was amazed. Now he caused her strong pity. A phone call brought her out of this state. The other end of the line said that there had been a fight between teenagers and Misha was in the hospital. Everything else happened for Katya, as in a dream. The boy's kidneys were badly damaged, and a transplant of one of them was necessary. The doctor called her into the office and said that they needed to perform an urgent operation to transplant a donor kidney and urgently look for a donor. She realized that she would not be able to help her son due to the congenital anomaly of her kidneys, and went out into the corridor. The woman could not stop crying. Suddenly, someone touched her shoulder. It was Sergei. I can't watch my son die. I'm ready to rip out my own heart if it will help him. Whispered, she threw herself on the chest of a man she didn't even know yesterday. I wasn't wrong about you. Then it's difficult. It would have been hard to find a better mother for Misha than you. Everything will be fine. I promise I'll be the donor. I told Sergei, but the doctor said that with your disease it's impossible. You're doomed. It's the only thing I can do for my son. The transplant took root, and with his young, healthy body, the boy recovered quickly. Unlike his son, Sergei had a much harder surgery and did not recover for a long time. Katya and her son visited him almost every day at Sergei's request. She told Misha who his biological father was. 3 months later, they were waiting for Sergei at the main entrance today. He was discharged after consultation with his son and father. The woman decided to take Sergei to her home and take care of him. After hearing this, Sergei was very touched and at the same time very happy because he had been in love with Katya for a long time. Sergei lived another 6 years. 6 years he died in Katya's arms, and every day they lived was filled with love for each other and their family. And Katya thanked fate for the fact that even for a short time, she felt loved and loved herself. And who knows how their fate would have turned out if she had not gone out to the yard that morning many years ago.